Good afternoon, everyone. Joseph here, talking from my little hideout in far north Queensland in Australia. It's very, very hot today, as you'd expect in summer. And it's hotter this year because I'm older this year, which of course is also a blessing. Now, I normally turn the camera thing on with my little doobie that I got. I'm very proud of that, but I can't find it. Being an amazing psychic, I've looked everywhere and I can't find the damn thing, which is pretty normal for me. I want to talk about something different today. We've been talking about psychic phenomena and all sorts of stuff like that. And as I've said earlier, I'm not a very spiritual man. I've been thinking about that. And by spiritual, I think I mean, I don't think I pass a morality test for many societies in the world, but I do try and be a good and kind human being. I haven't always been. I've hurt people. And I've tried very hard to sort of make amends to the universe and to help and to try and be a decent human being in every way I can. But the issue is, I want to talk about something today, and that's loss and grief and the end of the world. It's interesting because when I was a younger man, being a man, I knew everything about everything. And I've seen psychic phenomena from when I was very, very young. And I know many of you out there have a belief system and experiences that are very valid and quite contradictory to mine. And you may well be right. And that doesn't matter. You know, it's I think there's more than one version of right. Here's an example. When I was younger, I would have been 17 or 18, I went through I suppose it wasn't really a breakdown, more of a giant sulk or something. And I was in England at the time, and I went to stay at a place called Alnmouth, and there was a Franciscan friary there. And it's beautiful. This old mansion which the monks had fixed up, and it was on a cliff overlooking the North Sea. It was beautiful. They were often silent monks, and there'd be a great big table, and everybody would sit, and they were humorous, and they were lovely. And when they did talk, they'd sing songs that were probably inappropriate. They'd go to the pub on Friday nights and mingle with the locals. I worked in the nursery, and I've got no great skill with plants, but I helped Brother Wilfred. And he was blind, but he was one of the world's foremost experts on orchids and rare plants. And so he would tell them by smell and by the feel of them, and they were beautiful things. He didn't like me very much. That's okay. So I helped him there, and there was something beautiful about the whole thing, and the incense they made for themselves, and the gardens, and every low tide we go down to the beach, and the bits of coal would wash up, and you pick up the coal and they'd use that in their fires. It was beautiful. And further down the coast, you can Google these places, there's a place called Warkworth. There's a castle there, an old ruined castle, and along the river there forgive me, along the river there was a place where the legend was some knight had done something terrible, and to make amends to God, he dug a chapel in the side of this cliff, and it was extraordinary. It was like as big as my house, and it had little alcoves with, Virgin Mary and candles and stuff. And you can see where it's carved out of the solid rock. The spirituality and the willpower of these people. But anyway, I'm talking about this because it's not far from Newcastle on Tyne, and I've always been interested in history. So I was there one day, and I was looking around the Durham Cathedral, which is near Newcastle. This vast, big, old, 1,000-year-old cathedral, and it's so old that the stone smells damp. It's just very, very old. And they used to bury the knights and sort of famous and holy people in the floor. And I remember wandering around, and they had this little alcove, and it was dedicated to the Venerable Bede, B-E-D-E. And he wrote the first history of the English-speaking peoples. Very smart guy. He was venerable, not quite good enough to make saint, but he was considered quite something. I remember standing there and just looking at this and thinking, how very interesting is all this? And I felt like all of a sudden, I felt paralyzed by this beam of light. I could see it, I could feel it. It came up out of the floor, and it absolutely gripped and transfixed me. And I was so overwhelmed with joy, I could hardly breathe. And after about a minute, it was gone. What does it mean? I've got no idea. But in other religions, other groups, I've come across miraculous things with Buddhists and pagan folk and witchy folk and Christians. So obviously, whatever this is, it transcends belief systems. It's just something wonderful about the universe. Now, the other thing is, One day we'll be gone, even me. And the world we know will be gone, even 1,000 years from now. And I think humanity will still be here in a sense. We'll be like an ancient civilization. They wouldn't be able to understand our language, and most of us will be very much forgotten. And then even further off in time, the world itself will disappear, and billions of years from now, the universe itself will be gone. But this is something I've thought about for a long time, and I think it's true. Mostly true, well, completely true. There's something that stands out in my mind, and it's a sad memory, and I seem to remember sad things. Maybe it's my brain issue, I don't know. And there was a time, a long time ago, when I was with a previous partner, and we had 2 little children, and we went to a place called Marine Point, which is down on the Sunshine Coast. It was very pretty. Big lake, mountains in the distance. It's just beautiful. And you could walk out 100 meters into the water. It was so shallow and it was warm. I remember this day, it was a summer day. And my partner was there and I was there. She sat between my legs, and then my little daughter, who was about 8, she sat between her legs, and then my littlest boy, Sam, sat between her legs. And I felt true happiness. It was just beautiful. A sense of contentment. The problems we had, the problems in our life, they disappeared. And it was, from a Taoist point of view, it was just that the flow of this universal beauty and energy. And now it's long gone. It's more than 20 years gone. And it's lost in a sense. But my belief is that that moment is like a pearl, like a bubble. It was like the rest of the world disappeared, and there was an intensity of emotion. There was real beauty. It was wonderful. And I believe that when my life here is done, that when the universe itself is gone, that in some sense that bubble, that pearl will still exist. It will still have its own existence. It's imprinted itself on whatever's behind the universe. These peak moments, these powerful things, and I'm sure you've all had them. And I'm sure you've all felt a measure of grief that they're gone, whether it's people who die or different times in our life. And it's the nature of things, this flow and change, which I don't really like much, but it's the way it is. So in my mind, one day I'll sit in that lake again with people I love. And there's an intensity in the energy. True, we have all these belief systems, Christian, Buddhist, spiritualist, pagan, all these things, and they're all very important, and they all have an aspect of the truth, but we're still focused very much on now and what's happening in our world. And the Egyptians had a 3,000-year civilization. Ours is a few hundred years old, and no doubt will change and disappear. But there's a continuity and experience of being a human being. We're born, we die, we live in between, we hopefully find love, and we experience amazing things, like the other 100 billion people that have come before us, and hopefully the billions that come after us. So we have this experience, and I think that these intense experiences we have as human beings are more important than any religion, any belief system, any miracle, anything like that. They're beautiful. And they'll outlast everything. They're there, I'm sure of it. So, I feel quite emotional. And I'm blessed that you all are looking at this. Maybe there's only one of you, but if it is, hello. And I promised Frances in America I'd say hello, because she says that she loves watching, and she seems like a very decent human being. I wish you all happy, happy days, and lots of love and peace and happiness. So, without my little clicky thing, I've got to reach across here. It's like living in the 19th century. And I've got to find this little button. See you next week.